Hello there, I'm Steve from Mac84, and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about some pretty new things that Apple announced. The reason I'm going to talk about this is, well, I want to talk to you about it and find out your opinions, and I have some things to say about it as well. For those of you who didn't watch the Apple event, well, go ahead and watch it. No, I'll wait here. You're done? Okay, great. So Apple released not one, not two, but three new Apple Silicon-based Macintosh computers. They start shipping next week, and there's pretty much 2 or 3 more computers than people expected. People expected maybe Apple to release 1, maybe 2 machines. So 3 is pretty cool, so I'm pretty excited about that. These new machines are the very first in Apple's transition from using Intel processors to their new Apple Silicon processors. This is very similar in how Apple handled the 2005 transition when they went from PowerPC to Intel processors. Now I understand, especially in the technology world, things never stay the same for too long. So it's exciting to see Apple taking a leap forward here. However, I do have some thoughts and some questions I'd like to talk about. Before we begin, let me get some of my thoughts out in the open, so you realize where I'm coming from on these things. 1, I'm the type of dork who prefers the variety of ports, options, and horsepower over, say, a sleek and slim design that Apple usually prefers to use. 2, I'm not against the move to Apple Silicon, but I will miss the ability to run Windows natively and use some virtualization stuff. 3, for a company that prides itself on being so green, Apple's approach to using soldered-on memory and disks guarantee that a lot of these products will likely end up with an early retirement and an e-waste dump, which kinda stinks. So let's talk about Apple's new chipset, the M1. The M1 chip does seem promising, and I do have to congratulate Apple for taking a big leap forward here. However, what concerns me is there are a lot of unknowns, as there are with a lot of new things that are out there. So let's all remember that Apple is Apple. They will only market and only show what they want to show, because they tend to be very secretive. Now, during this announcement of these new Macs, they presented somewhat vague speed comparisons. They only noted that, let's say this was 2 times faster or 3 times faster than these older things ran on these older machines, but they didn't go into too much detail on what specific processor that machine had or what that specific task was or whatever. I mean, this is similar to how, they talk about their iPhones and their iPads that they sell. They don't really list the clock speed of things in those products, and for a long time that was fine. I mean, these were phones and tablets, but not computers. But as the maturity and the power of these A-series chips have increased, this has somewhat changed, and of course this has led to Apple wanting to use these chips in their Macs. Now, I know clock speed isn't everything. I mean, obviously, for those of you who have lived through the Apple period of the whole megahertz myth, it's pretty apparent. But to use something as a benchmark to compare against other machines, well, a clock speed is one way to do that. Now, I'm sure when Geekbench comes out with the scores on these machines, we'll have a better understanding of how fast they are compared to, let's say, a 2012 Mac Pro or a 2019 Mac Pro or let's say a 2018 Mac Mini or something like that. But until then, I guess we're just going to have to wait and speculate. But without concrete benchmarks, I am a bit skeptical as to how we determine the true power of these new chips. I'm sure they're great, but further details would be a little bit more convincing. Now, even if they don't list or compare the chips on a clock speed level, they could at least have compared a chip series or a series of chips. So for example, they could say this M1 Mac is 2 times faster than an Intel Core i5 or 3 times faster than an Intel Core i3 doing video editing on this app. Some details like that would have been more appreciative. I think they sort of alluded to some of that, but they weren't 100% clear. What also isn't 100% clear to me is if this same M1 chip is going to be the same exact chip that is used across all 3 of these new Macs. I totally expect that the MacBook Air's M1 chip would be clocked a bit slower, since that system doesn't have a fan at all, so it has to stay cool. Not having a fan in a MacBook is neat, and it's kind of like an iPad now. I guess that checks that important Jobsian checkbox that he would have loved. Too bad they didn't seem to include fans where they really should have. Back to my point, do the Mac Mini and the MacBook Pro have the same M1 chip? I mean, is one clocked faster than the other? If they're the same, why not tell us and just remove all the doubt? And if they aren't the same, I mean, maybe we should know that? That might be important information to know of someone trying to decide between a Mac Mini and a MacBook Pro. Again, I'm sure someone will crank out the benchmarks in a few days or a few weeks and all my ranting will just be obsolete, but I hope Apple does become a bit more transparent about this information in the future. These are computers, they are not tablets, and I just hope that Apple understands the difference between the two. Yeah, maybe we're on our own here. Next, let's talk about the configurations of these new Macs. Now, if you're expecting to buy a low-end model of one of these new machines, and maybe upgrade it down the road in the future, well, you can't. You can't. At least not internally. Apple doesn't want you to do that, so they're not allowing you to do that. The solid-state drives and memory on all three of these models are soldered onto the logic board. This shouldn't come as a huge surprise, but I was pretty shocked about the Mac Mini. The 2018 Mac Mini model finally gave us user-installable memory, so we could actually upgrade the memory inside of that machine. The 2014 Mac Mini had soldered-on memory and drove people nuts. So the 2018 model finally saved you from being stuck to pay that Apple tax if you wanted some more memory in your system. However, having the memory soldered on is preventing you from upgrading it in the future. So if your needs grow, you're pretty much stuck. So you have to shell out that money at the beginning, otherwise you're out of luck in the future. I'm glad the 2018 Mac Mini model gave you the option to upgrade the memory. Yes, it was kind of a pain to do that, but at least you could do it. However, it seems we're back to square one here, and I hope Apple, maybe they had some technological or physical limitation here. I hope that was the case, but why couldn't they just give us memory slots? I would really, really prefer if they did that. It would just make this machine last much longer. But unfortunately, reality is setting in here, and I think it's just a matter of Apple's bottom line. They want you to pay more for memory up front. They don't want you going anywhere else a year or two down the road and giving somebody else money for memory. Apple wants your cash, and they want it now. So you either pay Apple now, or you regret not paying them when your frugal habits bring your workflow to a halt, and you end up buying a new machine down the road. Now, I have a problem with this, obviously, because, well, e-waste. These are computers, they're not tablets, and I really hope Apple understands the differences between... That's right. So, yeah, 8 gigabytes of memory seems fine now for a base model. Just like 256 megabytes seemed fine in 2002, but, things change. And, for years, 8 gigabytes was okay, but, a few years down the road, these power users or people that just need more space, they're going to run out of memory on these systems, and everything's soldered on, so they can't be upgraded. Now, I understand the Mac Mini may not be the ideal machine for a power user, but at least the 2018 model could be customized by up to 64 gigabytes of memory, and it was a pretty nice model when you configured it that way. This brings me to the SSD. Now, the standard configuration that the Mac Mini has comes with a 256 gigabyte SSD, and I mean, that's pretty small today. I just think in a desktop computer, even a low-end one, I mean, in Apple's perfect world, you have everything on iCloud, and maybe you have an external disk for a time machine backup, but I mean, I don't think that's enough space in the real world. So the 256 gigabyte inclusion in the base model is pretty weak. I pay for 2 terabytes of iCloud storage because I have a problem of taking too many photos and videos, but even with a fast wired Ethernet connection to a fiber internet service, iCloud isn't so fast, and sometimes it's not the best solution out there. Syncing documents on macOS is sometimes slow, and I don't know, more often than not, it's almost faster for me to plug my iPhone in via a USB 2 cable and download some videos over to the computer rather than downloading them from iCloud and just waiting for a while. Then again, in my mind, this is probably a cost thing. Apple just, they want to make 3 to 4 times a profit on whatever they sell. And I understand that. These add-ons are very lucrative to them. But a 256 gigabyte SSD on a desktop machine in 2020, in my opinion, that's pretty low. I get it, you could pay for more storage, and you're welcome to do that, but, I mean, why start so low? I realize you can go up to 2 terabytes, but if Apple's supposed to be this luxury brand of computers, right? Stop being so cheap on us. You have the power of these massive factories at your disposal. You could, literally just purchase a bulk of 512 gigabyte chips at a factory and, what, would they cost a few more dollars? Then you wouldn't have to stock the 256 chips. I don't know. I mean, for comparison, the 2010 iMac shipped with an optional 256 gigabyte SSD as an add-on. So it kind of feels like we're stepping back to then. I don't know. Maybe I'm just crazy, but I mean, at least they're not using the 5400 RPM hard drives anymore. I probably shouldn't mention that, should I? I'm giving them bad ideas. Finally, I want to talk about ports and expandability. Now, I fully understand that every user is different and that they have different needs, and I strongly prefer wires and accessible ports over wireless antennas and storage in the cloud. But that's just me, and I don't see my personal needs changing anytime soon. but other users may have all their data in the cloud and they may be happy with the limited storage options that are available to them and may treat the computer like an iPad, but that's not me. I treat a computer like a computer. Like I said, I have more than 2 terabytes of data, so iCloud is not ideal for me, and I don't want to be tethered to an external hard drive, and I don't want to shell out another $200 for more space if, that could have been an option that was, given to me. Again, don't cheap out on us, Apple. We understand that you make lucrative profit margins in these add-ons, but there's a bit of a limit here. It probably is no surprise to you that these new M1-based MacBook Airs have pretty much the same connectivity as the previous versions. They have faster Wi-Fi, they have 2 Thunderbolt/USB-C ports, and thankfully there's a headphone jack that Apple has decided not to remove yet. Unfortunately, it also retains the less than stellar 720p webcam that the 2020, 2017, and 2012 MacBook Air models had. So there's no difference connectivity-wise, but the MacBook never really pushed the boundaries of expandability, so most people that want the MacBook Air, they'll probably be perfectly fine with it, and, I think that's okay. But the webcam, why? Come on, this 720p built-in webcam was probably decent back in 2012. It replaced the older fixed-focus 640x480 camera that was on the previous generation of MacBooks. But 720p video cameras in 2020, when you're pushing this product to be like the go-to for people working from home or doing online learning, I do appreciate the software post-processing that Apple is bringing to the Mac because, this is similar to what they've been doing with iOS devices and it enhances the image quality and stuff, but hardware will always be king and optics will always be king. So if Apple, again, is going to act like a luxury company, in my opinion, they need to step up their game a bit in some areas. I don't think that they need to put a 4K camera in there, but come on, let's at least get to a 1080p camera soon. I'm also not that stupid. I understand there is a limitation that the screen size is so small and so thin that they maybe can't put a sensor in there that does 1080p video. Understand that, but maybe swallow your pride and just make the screen a millimeter thicker? At least for the MacBook Pro. Come on, that's a little bit silly. Connectivity-wise, the Mac Mini, well, it's a bit more confusing. The 2018 model featured 4 Thunderbolt 3 USB-C ports, 2 USB-A ports, and an HDMI port, and a Gigabit Ethernet port, and there was the add-on option for, even faster Ethernet. Now, the new M1-based 2020 model acts as that fast Ethernet option, but more crucially, for users that want those extra ports, it removes 2 of those additional Thunderbolt ports. Why did they do this? I could only assume it was a performance limitation, or they wanted to artificially limit the machine so it wouldn't compete with future Macs or something like that. Now, maybe they didn't want to make the jump to having more ports until they had Thunderbolt 4 figured out yet, but I don't know. Those are the only things I could think of off the top of my head. Yes, you can get a Thunderbolt Hub, but who wants to install a hub on a desktop, especially a brand new one that just came out? You should always have the connectivity you need right built into the machine. However, I am concerned that this limitation may be performance related, and here's why. Now, when you take a look at the technical specifications of the new M1 Mac Mini and the 2018 Mac Mini, it's an interesting story as far as the graphics goes. Now, the 2018 Mac Mini used an Intel UHD 630 integrated graphics chipset. This boasted the ability to support either 3 4K displays or 1 5K display and 1 4K display at the same time. The new M1 Mac Mini, however, says it could only drive 1 6K display on Thunderbolt and 1 4K display on HDMI at the same time. I'm not saying the M1 graphics are underpowered, but hopefully benchmarks will prove us wrong, and yeah, it's pretty good for the price range, but if you're expecting to plug the same amount of monitors into this Mac Mini, you may be a little bit disappointed. I'd be very curious to see what would happen if you tried to plug in 3 4K displays into this Mac Mini. Does the video resolution get scaled down to like 640 by 480, or does it actually work decently? I have no idea, so I'm very curious to find out. If this is the case, though, maybe that's why they are still offering the 2018 Mac Mini on their store, and for a higher price, but I guess we'll find out soon enough. Now, who knows? Maybe the next revision of this Mac Mini will feature Thunderbolt 4 and faster graphics, and it'll alleviate all these issues, but that's probably not what users are going to use for this machine. They're not going to plug all these displays into it, but maybe they will. This is just a question I have, and I'm just curious about how that'll work. Again, I know this isn't a pro machine, but a lot of pros do love this machine, and because there isn't a better standalone Mac out there, maybe Apple should make a Mac Mini Pro or something, but we'll get into that a little bit later. This new M1 chip also includes a version of Apple's T2 security chip built right into their chipset. This reduces the amount of chips on the board. This is something Steve Wozniak would probably be thrilled about. However, nothing is impenetrable, and Intel had some pretty bad luck and vulnerability issues with their chipsets recently. Apple had some problems with their T2 chips as well. So I'm not saying this is Apple's fault. I just hope that someone took this into consideration when they were building this new chipset with this security thing that's built right into the processor. While I'm all for being secure, I'm less than thrilled about what this may mean for the Mac. Now, again, this is total wild speculation. This is not proven or anything like that. But I certainly hope we do not go down the path of how software updates are handled on the OS level in iOS with the Macintosh. Now, on my Mac, I want to be able to run the version of the OS I want. Maybe it's the version that shipped with the computer originally. Maybe it's a version that is technically not supported on older hardware. If I want to stay behind for a current release, let's say for compatibility reasons, I want the ability to do so. I sincerely hope we do not go down the path of Apple-signed OS releases where Apple controls what OS I can install or restore to or reinstall on my Macintosh. For those of you who are unfamiliar with this process, this is how it works on iOS. Basically, once Apple stops digitally signing an update, you can't use it on your iPad or iPhone. You can't install it on your device. This is because Apple requires your device to talk to its servers online to determine if the software update can actually be installed or not. And you can't really get around this. For example, if I have an older iPad and I want to update to iOS 13, and let's say I do that, and then I realize, oh geez, this is really slow and sluggish, I can't live with this, I have to quickly erase that iPad and restore it to iOS 12 before Apple closes the very short window of opportunity that I have. Because this short time frame is of course never advertised, but it usually occurs a few days or even a few hours after a new iOS release. Again, I really hope I'm not giving Apple any ideas, but this would be horrible on the Mac. I can just think of the power users in the Macintosh community. I think we would all agree that we would like to retain our control on the version of macOS that we run on our Macs. Especially if you're a developer, you need to test that software across multiple configurations and multiple operating systems if necessary. So that's my gut reaction to these new products. This was recorded on Tuesday, November 10th, 2020, and I'm sure by now, by the time you're watching this video, some of my questions have already been answered and maybe we have some specs and benchmarks already. But, that's to be expected. We'll learn more as we go along with these new computers. And it's not all bad, really. I think some of these machines are actually quite impressive, especially at the price points. I mean, obviously, these are not the top-of-the-line models. And, the prices aren't too horrible. $699 for a Mac Mini? I obviously would like some upgrades in there. But, the battery on the new notebooks, excellent battery life as far as I'm concerned. And those instant wake capabilities, that's really cool right there. Reminds me of the iPad. So, again, the future of the Mac, it still seems very bright, so that's good. I just wish Apple the best of luck with these new series of computers. I mean, it stings that we lost Boot Camp and Windows virtualization in the process. We'll miss you, PC. But, I fully understand that these are the very first in the line of Apple's new Macs, and I hope that Apple will improve their M-series chips and their Macs with every generation. I'd love to see some really powerful and expandable systems from Apple, but personally, unless one of these new machines drops out of the sky onto my desk, I think I'll stay clear of this revision A type stuff for a while. Don't get me wrong, I think that Mac Mini is very tempting, but I think I'll wait for something better. And Apple, while you're reinventing the Macintosh here, why don't you consider releasing a mid-level expandable Mac again, huh? Maybe like a Mac Mini Pro or, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. Oh boy, that would be nice. Just something like a Power Macintosh 7500 or a beige G3 desktop. Or give us something that a mid-level power user would buy. Give us some of the expandability we need, but at a price point that we could afford. We don't need all the bells and whistles. We'd like some, but we don't need all of them. But just give us something that doesn't have it soldered on memory and soldered on disks, and maybe an expansion port or two. Ooh, that'll be nice. Some of us would love to play around with the huge power and expandability of a Mac Pro, but that simply is way out of reach for our budgets. So just think about that. Make a computer for the rest of us. Again, you've done it before. I'd probably buy one. Just make sure you include a fan this time. So that's about it for this video. I hope everyone has enjoyed watching it. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel if you haven't already subscribed to it. You could follow me also on Instagram and Twitter if you'd like, and you can always support this channel on Patreon if you'd like to do that as well. But that's it for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you here next time on Mac 84.